I'm Thom Diaz, attorney at the Rainwater firm. I'm going to talk to you about medical care, but I want to do this a little bit different. I want this to be as interactive as possible. A number of you I talked to see if you were coming up here and said, try and think of questions and see if you can stump Mike Rainwater. So please, bring us your questions. Because I think this is one of the areas that we see the most litigation in, having to deal with medical issues. So again, I designed this discussion, I've got 30 minutes, but I've designed this primarily to try and make this interactive so that you can ask questions or bring up scenarios that you've seen that others might benefit from hearing about. So I'm going to start off, this first slide is just generally going to tell you what we're going to talk about today. First one, talking about the duty to pay for the medical care. And like Colin, there's going to be a theme that I'm going to run through here, and that is this idea of deliberate indifference, all right? That's the standard that you're held to with regard to medical care, necessary medical care. So again, the county has a duty, you have a duty not to be deliberately indifferent to a need for necessary health care, all right? And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, what deliberate indifference means, all right? Now, if no medical care provider will see an inmate that needs medical care unless you agree to pay for it, you got to take that inmate to the medical care provider and agree to pay for it, okay? Now, there's a difference here. There may be some scenarios, in most scenarios, you have to bring that prisoner to get the necessary medical treatment, but the duty to pay for it is different. But what we're trying to convey here is you may have a clever medical care provider that's trying to put you in a box. And what I mean by that is you've got an inmate, you've got a prisoner that it's very obvious they need immediate medical attention outside of the facility. And you've got a medical care provider that says, you know what, I'll see this inmate, but you have to agree to pay for it. Well, you've got to agree to pay for it because the overriding rule here is you've got to get that inmate the medical treatment. Kind of like Mike was talking about at the beginning, this parent-child relationship. You're the parent. That inmate's the child. You've got to get them the medical treatment. And if you've got a medical care provider that's trying to put you in that box and won't see that prisoner unless you agree to pay for it, you got to agree to pay for it. Now, whether or not you actually pay for it on the back end, that's something that we can help you with. And we've got a couple of calls about medical care providers that are chasing some of our jails to get paid for bills. And that's something, again, we can help you with, all right? And I shouldn't have put this in red because I can see that some of the things that I put in red are hard to see, but the point that I want to make with some of the things I've highlighted here is Mike's talked about this a little bit. You have the option to release inmates. Now you have to do it appropriate, you have to do it legally, but if you've got an inmate that needs that medical attention and it's very clear that they need it, you have options to release them. Give them a citation to appear to come back, and I think Mike told you that if it's a misdemeanor, you can do it. If it's a felony, you got to get the prosecutor's approval. But you can let them out, give them a citation to appear to come back after that medical treatment. So that's a way that you can deal with this to, again, do your obligation, meet your duty to provide that necessary medical care, but you're outside of that box as far as having to pay for it because it's then on their own. If they've got insurance, they can deal with it. If they don't have insurance, the hospital still has to see them. All right. The last point here, the county can obtain reimbursement from the detainee if the detainee is convicted of the offense. That's something that I don't think I've talked to anybody about that. I've only been a lawyer 27 years, but I've been working in this area for only about 2.5, 3 years. And I get a lot of questions. I answer a lot of phone calls. And again, as Mike said, we want you to come to us with our questions. But I don't think this is anything that I've dealt with, and I invite Mike or Jason, Janan to talk about a little bit more. But there is a statute in Arkansas that allows you to recover the costs of housing that inmate you can get reimbursement from it. And I think Mike wants to talk a little bit about that.
He invited me to, so I'm gonna talk.
Absolutely.
Don't make that mistake twice. I've got it in the book here. Let me find the page. Yeah, go to page 100, and then that's where the paying for health care starts. And then 109 is the part about if convicted shall pay. Those are words right out of the statute. They have a legal obligation to pay for the cost of housing, which would include the cost of medical care, but the problem with that is collection, obviously. And there are some ways to do it. Not very successful, because we need a coordinated system to do that. And with all the other stuff we're doing, that just never has really happened. But you can't have a copay policy. How many of y'all have a copay policy? Who does not have a copay policy? I'm telling you right now, you need a copay policy. We got an article in here on that. We'll help you with that. There's no reason not to have a copay policy. A copay policy means that part of the money comes out of commissary balance they have, or it gets charged as a credit to their commissary. And so if they get money, then it's offset by that charge that's in there. You cannot refuse care, but you certainly can put a charge in there. And all it does is get their mind right, because sometimes they'd rather have a candy bar than they would go see the nurse. That's their choice. No problem there, but it will definitely help, okay? Another important thing is emergency medical care. No hospital in America can refuse anybody that arrives at the emergency room, period. So if you take them to the emergency room, they're stuck. And your officer should never agree to pay for emergency medical care at the emergency room, because you don't have a duty to agree, and they have a duty to treat, okay? A subpart on that is, you can call EMS and have them take them over there. Okay? Problem is, EMS, they're not their prisoner. If you take a jailer with you, well, then you got that issue. You can cite them out of jail. You know it's going to be expensive? Doggone it. Get that prosecutor on the line, or get the judge on the line, and get them released until they get their treatment. You got to be on your game to manage this medical care expense, okay? I won't take more of that.
No, that's fine. I've kind of skipped through a couple of the slides because we've talked about them, but I think it's important to note, I actually got a call earlier this week from a jail administrator about how to deal with, money that's left over in the commissary account. Inmates have money put in there and they released, and then, they have a little bit of money left. And that's something to also consider. That may be a way, with these copay policies, or to deal with this reimburse. If they were convicted, they're released, and they have money left over in their commissary account, that may be a way that you get something back for at least the time that they were in there. Now, Mike, you talked a little bit about due process with that, and I haven't worked the problem and talked to a Tiger commissary about it. But there may be some kind of a systematic approach to doing this. Where again, if you've got prisoners that leave, how is that something that's very common? You have prisoners that get out and they may have a few dollars or whatever left over in their commissary account.
We give it to them.
You give it to them when they leave?
You should. Released out of jail.
Okay.
I don't know anybody that keeps it.
Yeah, our checks are $1 and they get a check for 25 cents.
It doesn't matter, give them a check.
Right.
Yeah.
But think about this. Tiger makes a lot of money off commissary. They're doing everything the same way for everybody. Shift your problem over to them. Okay? They need to come up with a solution. They ought to be giving you all the forms, all the procedures, and this is a common problem. What I do is somebody gets out of jail. Tiger should have the answer to that. They're the vendor, they're the expert, and if they're going to provide the service and get paid for it, they need to add that additional service. Now, if they don't know what to do, once again, we'll jump in there and we'll solve that problem. We would love to solve any problem. When I say we, that's the royal we. That means all of us, AAC, whoever. We work together. But what I'm saying is, we can come up with one-size-fits-all solution on this, okay? The due process issues are, if you're going to keep somebody's money, that's taking their property, and you have to do it with due process of law, because everything we do has to flow through that 14th Amendment formula. Which means there's got to be notice I'm going to do it. There's got to be a hearing opportunity in the middle of it. If there's a dispute, the third party's got to resolve it. Those are the three elements of procedural due process. Once again, it's complicated. But I think we can fix some of these things if we work collectively. That's one of the reasons to all get together here. Okay? And I'm telling you, we have a fantastic resource here with the attorneys here on the AAC staff. And everybody's in this. We want to fix these problems. So don't think you're out there by yourself. You got a problem with the commissary? Let's go upstream. Let's see if we can solve this problem and come up with an institutional solution. Okay? So it is complicated. All this stuff's complicated, but that's what we do. It's no problem. We can unscramble these eggs working together.
How much do you have to pay for the medical care? It's at the Medicaid rate. So if you get a hospital or medical care provider and they're trying to charge you the sticker rate, there's some pushback there. And the law says that it's charged the Medicaid rate, all right? So that's really what we're trying to communicate here. We've talked a little bit about co-pays. Again, it's constitutional. You can have co-pays, and as Mike said, if you don't, there's no reason not to. The key here is you can't deny somebody medical treatment if they don't have the ability to pay for it. But that doesn't mean that you can't show that their commissary account or what have you is in a negative balance due to those co-pays, and as soon as money is put in there, you can suck it out to pay for that. Okay, so it's a way that you can get some reimbursement for that. And as we already said, do not deny medical care based on inability to pay that copay. That's key.
You said one other thing about pay. Who in here is not using private option health insurance, signing up your inmates for insurance? Raise your hands high. You're leaving money on the table. We have a system for this. I've got an article in here on page 105. There's a guy named Matt Glass who's selling that insurance. And guess what the cost on that insurance is? Zero. Zero.
This is through the Affordable Health Care Act?
It's a part of that. This is Arkansas's part of the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare. Okay? You got to think backwards to understand how this works. We have a broken healthcare system. It's broken because it's completely private and treaters can refuse to treat unless they get paid. The flip side is we have a society that's built on a framework, a Reformation framework that says we are our brother's keeper. And if somebody can't pay, somehow our society is going to figure out a way to get them treated. So you got this big gap between those two philosophies. Private enterprise, love your brother. So we got to close the gap. We cannot close the gap unless we change the system. We cannot change the system unless we prime the pump. Okay? And so what Arkansas has done is they've taken the invitation by the federal government to pay 90% of the cost of offering health insurance to our citizens. That includes our citizens who are in your jail. This is like food stamps for insurance. If you're hungry, the government will give you food stamps, or whatever they're called now, to go and get food, free food. Why? We are our brother's keeper. The grocery store wants to get paid because we believe in free enterprise. So we build a bridge between those two, and it's called food stamps. What do they call that now? It's something else.
It was a card, that's all I know.
SNAP, okay? Whatever it is. This is insurance for poor people. If your income is less than 138% of the average income of Arkansas, which is not very high, folks, you're entitled to free insurance. So here's what you do is when they come in jail, you sign them up for free insurance. They're not entitled to use the free insurance while they're in jail. Well, that sounds like a problem. But they're going to get out, what's going to happen to them? They're going to come back to jail. Guess what? When they come back to jail, they're going to have private insurance that they got for free from the federal government. And then you're going to take their private insurance and you get a little window of time in there where you can treat them. And so you immediately send them out, get their care done. It gets paid for by private option insurance. Now here's the amazing thing. The state of Arkansas, through DHS, has come to us and said, would you please tell all your counties to sign up all their prisoners on free private option health insurance? You say, well, that sounds crazy. Why do we want to do that? Because we want to change the healthcare system. We want to build a bridge between I'm my brother's keeper and I love free enterprise. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to change the economics of delivering healthcare. In economics, you have a supply side and you have a demand side. There's plenty of demand for more healthcare services. The problem is supply, because they won't do it unless they get paid, so we have to pay them so they will do it. That's why you see all these urgent care centers popping up on all the corners, okay? Because they're getting paid now. The reason they're getting paid is because private option health insurance, affordable care insurance, which is the government priming the pump. And you say, well, why would the government want to do that? It's back to, we are our brother's keeper. It's called Arkansas Medicaid. All we're doing is rechanneling the same dollars. Instead of channeling those dollars through a broken system, we're going to rechannel those dollars in order to create a new system. What we're doing is we're working on the supply side of the economic calculus so that we can meet the demand, so that all of a sudden we have people who are in the business of providing primary care and they become very efficient. One thing about free enterprise, you hold a dollar out there, somebody will figure out how to get that dollar, and somebody else will figure out how to get it cheaper and make a better margin than the other guy, and you start driving costs down. Okay? So just like Walmart, everyday low prices, we want to do that in the healthcare business, and we want these care providers to do that. Yes, sir?
I just talked to Mr. Glass last week,
Yeah, is it changing?
and one thing I didn't realize that he brought to a point, when they're reincarcerated, that only covers them for the first 30 days.
That means you got to act quick.
Beyond that 30 days,
Agree.
it falls back to the county.
Agree. If somebody's on Social Security disability and they end up in jail, they don't get their Social Security disability while they're in jail, because you don't get that stuff when you're in jail. It's a little social policy penalty they put in there to try to get people to do what? Function orderly. Play by the rules of our society. Okay? But you have that little window in there when they come in, you need to do your health care screening, you need to figure out what their issues are, you need to get them primary care physician, you need to get on with it. And this is back to the booking process. I have a whole section in there in booking. Okay? If they're broken, bleeding, can't walk, can't talk, don't take them. You make the arresting officer take them for care, period. They go to the emergency room, it's free. Emergency room bills you, we tell them to eat it because they had a duty under federal law, we have no duty. Then when they come back, you do your your health care screening, figure out everything you've done, and the last time they were, you signed them up for private option. So now they're back, and now you get to use it. You have that little window of time, send them out and take care of them. If it's bad news, oh, wait a minute, this is going to turn into a long, it's not acute, it's chronic, we're going to have to pay for it, we don't want to. Then you can deal with it through Rule 5.2, or you can call the prosecutor and the judge and say, we need to get this person out of jail, use a citation, they're too sick to hurt anybody anyway, let's get them out of here so we don't end up being the guy that has to pay the bill. Okay? If you don't proactively manage this stuff, it'll eat you up. Now on top of that, the AAC goes out to the legislature and somehow tricked everybody into saying that Medicaid rates apply for all health care, so they're going to send you the manufacturer's suggested retail price on their invoice. Do not pay that, period. Everything's subject to negotiation, number one. Number two, you have the hammer because by law they can only charge Medicaid rates. And Medicaid rates are going to be like 20 or 25% of the retail price. You know, that's why we're getting together. We've got to be smarter in order to skin the cat. Okay? Because there's not enough money for it.
Any other questions about that issue?
Yeah, what if they refuse to see them if you're gonna make them Medicare rate?
If the medical care provider refuses to see them?
You got to find another.
I don't have that, I don't have one in town.
Well,
Go out of town.
and you know, that creates an interesting issue. I know what you're saying. You may have one clinic.
Just repeat the question.
Okay, yeah, the question is, what if you have, you know, one medical care provider that's agreed to see your inmates, and that medical care provider has refused to accept the Medicaid rate? What do? Well, if it's a necessary medical issue that the inmate needs to be seen, you got to agree to pay what you got to agree to pay to get him seen. Because again, it goes back to that duty. You're the parent, they're the child. You got to get them that necessary medical care. Now, if you've got a medical care provider that's, again, trying to squeeze you and put you in that box, call us. There might be something that we can do. There might be something that we can go to that medical care provider and show them what the law is. Now, again, the issue there is it sounds like you may have one medical care provider that's willing to see your inmates, and you may not want to upset them because then you're going to be out a medical care provider. So we're certainly going to be sensitive to that. But through dialogue, through talking it through, there might be a way that we can help you work through that problem.
What is your county?
Right.
Okay.
It's actually a dentist instead of.
A dentist?
Well, dentists are more difficult because
Yeah, he says
Different
I
kind
just
of
want
care.
to see him, I'm not gonna be.
Yeah.
there are medical care providers who want to do this, and there are medical care providers who are building systems to do this. And we're just now in the middle of a transition. But believe me, it's working. This is why Obamacare does work, because we're working on the demand side of the economic circle here. And they are creating demand, there are people who want to do that, and there are also traveling dentists available for that. I have a son who's a dentist, and he worked on the traveling dentist program, where they literally go from county to county to fill that gap in there. We come back to, we are our brother's keeper, and then our state has this duty, and they discharge that through Medicaid, okay? So if you'll let us know of your particular problem, we can address your particular problem.
I'm going to move on because I've got about 5 minutes left. I want to talk about deliberate indifference. Again, most of the medical, the lawsuits that we see have to do with this. But before I hit that, I want to talk about this idea of a, quote, no narcotic facility, all right? That's something that I have got questions where, you know, I get jail administrators or jailers say, listen, my sheriff says he or she does not want narcotics in the jail. And I get that, I understand it, there's reasoning behind it. But what the law says is if there is a policy that is simple as that, no narcotics, end of story, there's a law that says that's unconstitutional, all right? What you have to do is you have to put that decision in the hands of your medical care provider, all right? It is perfectly fine, and what I tell my folks when they call me, I say, listen, I understand that policy, or I understand that reasoning, it makes sense to me. But what you have to do is have the sheriff, or you go talk to the doc that you use, and say, listen, we have issues with narcotics in the jail, and these are the issues. So doc, please, if we've got an inmate that's coming in and they have a prescription for narcotics, I want you to take a look at it and see if you, doctor, can make a medical judgment to see if there's something else that you can prescribe besides narcotics. The point is, put that decision in the medical care provider's hands, not your hands. Because if you have a policy that there are no narcotics in your jail, and it comes from the sheriff, and there's no medical judgment that goes into that analysis, it is unconstitutional. Simple as that. Put the decision in your medical care provider. Have a conversation with them. Please, look at the medicine. Is there something different that you can administer? Is there something besides a narcotic? And usually they can. They usually can. Now, there may be, and there probably are going to be circumstances where you've got somebody in your jail that needs narcotic medications, plain and simple. Their arm has fallen off. Who knows? I mean, there's something that's happened that the doctor, again, the medical care provider says, listen, this person needs narcotics. You got to deal with it. You got to figure out a way to deal with it. Simple as that. The point I'm trying to make here is we don't want you to make medical decisions. You're not doctors. You're not nurses. You're not medical care practitioners. And that argument, believe it, that's an argument we use quite a bit to get you out of lawsuits. So, I'm off my high horse on that one, okay? Deliberate indifference. This one, the way I try and explain to it when I'm talking to jailers is, if you know that an inmate has a serious health risk, serious medical need, and you do nothing about it, and they are injured, You're being deliberately indifferent. If you don't know that the inmate has a serious health issue and you do nothing about it, you're fine. Because you haven't, as I call it, you haven't connected the dots. In order for you to be liable, in order for you to be deliberately indifferent, you have to know of the serious health risk, and then you do nothing. And they're hurt. That's deliberate indifference. Okay? It's as simple as that. Now, if you know there's a serious health risk, and you do something, and it's wrong, you're not liable. This isn't, the civil lawsuits where you're suing a doctor or a nurse for being negligent. You can be negligent. You just have to do something. You can't ignore the problem. You can't turn a blind eye to an inmate that you know needs serious medical. They have a serious medical condition and they need help. So I can't stress that enough. Do something and document it. So then if you get sued because, you made the wrong decision, we can show you did something. We can show that you weren't deliberately indifferent. Third-party medical care providers. How many folks have outside contract medical services? Okay. And that's helpful. A lot of times that's helpful because, again, when we get a lawsuit over medical issues, we're able to say, okay, we've got a contracted party, they're the folks that are dealing with it, and that usually can help us out. But it's not the silver bullet here, okay? And what I mean by that, if you've got a medical care provider, third-party provider that you know is just ignoring medical requests, you know they're not doing their job, and you're just turning a blind eye and an inmate is hurt, that could create some issues for you. If nothing else, it might be a question of fact where I can't get the case dismissed and we have to have a judge or a jury, a trier of fact, make a decision. So yes, having a third-party medical care provider, there's a lot of times that I can just say, okay, they've got another attorney. All I have to do is worry about my jail administrator or my jailers, that I can show and prove that they've turned over all of those medical requests and they've done all of those things. They weren't deliberately indifferent. But again, be careful. If you find that one of your medical care providers, that third-party provider, is just not doing their job, they're turning a blind eye, they're not taking care of your inmates, and that becomes a systematic problem, then it could become your problem. All right, so just keep that in mind. Medical care after force incidents. I've seen some folks that regardless of whether or not that inmate looks like they've got issues or problems after a force incident, they have medical check them out every time, and that's certainly fine. All right. There are other jails that, again, they don't have that in-house medical staff, and so it's more of an issue. So what I try to tell them in those circumstances is, if there's a force incident, and it is obvious that that inmate has cuts, bruises, get them checked out medically. Get them checked out. Do what you got to do, okay? If you have a force incident, and again, you're one of the jails, you don't have in-house medical, and there's no obvious injuries, there's no cuts, bruises, nothing else, take pictures. Save them, okay? Because a lot of times what will happen is we'll get a lawsuit, and that inmate will say that, you know what, I was beat up, I had bruises, I had cuts all over me, and I talked to the jailer or the administrator, and they say, no, they didn't, they were fine. Well, you know what? If I've got a photograph that I can show a judge in a motion for summary judgment where you've got an inmate saying, they kicked the crap out of me and I was bleeding all over the floor, and my jailer says, no, he wasn't, there were no bruises, no cuts, and here are the pictures, those pictures can be the tiebreaker. All right? Are we going to talk about video? Is that going to be part of it?
Yeah, later.
We're going to talk about it? All right.
Okay, we're going to move into due process. This has to do with segregation and the processes that are required for segregation. Before we jump into that, I just want to point out in healthcare issues, I got an article on prenatal care. That's necessary care. You got somebody in your jail and they're pregnant. It's not just a matter of getting them out before they have a baby. you have to provide the full regimen of prenatal care. You say, why is that? Well, that's called necessary health care, okay? And these judges will smack us on that, I guarantee you, particularly the female judges will nail us on that. And we've had some difficult cases. And the other thing is, let me tell you, they have babies all the time in that 9-month period. You know, maybe the size of a pumpkin seed, but I guarantee you it's gonna happen sometime. So it's really dangerous to have a pregnant person in your jail. And it's especially dangerous if you're not, it's just flat out violation, you don't have prenatal care. Back on dental pain real quick, it's about pain. We don't care how rotten their teeth are, it's about pain, okay? And, you know, you need to have a relationship with the doctor, a dentist, and the dentist needs to understand what we're doing here. We're not fixing everybody's teeth. We're keeping them out of pain, okay? But you can't have an extraction-only policy. That kind of stuff is arbitrary. Anytime you have we always do it this way, that's a problem. You know, we have no newspapers because we don't like fires and toilets stopped up. That's a problem. You know, we don't provide any dental care because we don't have it, that's a problem. Absolutes are a problem on both ends, yes, sir.
Question, we're the keeper of the keys, we hold Marshall. Marshall has an extraction only policy, does that fall back on us?
It would. I can't believe U.S. Marshal had an extraction only policy.
Extraction only, they will not repair.
Well, what that means is you gotta go to the dentist, and if the dentist says, it can be repaired, and it costs less than an extraction, then they either take that prisoner back or they're gonna pay for it, period. Because it's all about money, okay? If they can fix a tooth with a filling instead of pulling their tooth out, then it is arbitrary punishment to take their tooth out simply because they're in jail. Why? It has no rational basis. It has no rational basis because you get the same outcome and it costs the same or less. The government is precluded from doing things that are irrational. That's called a violation of substantive due process, okay? We're going to teach you a lesson by pulling your teeth out because you're in jail business, okay? We're in we had to take your liberty away from you in order to maintain order, but we're not going to arbitrarily inflict pain business, okay? That's why we have to deal with that. So, there's a solution to everything. You just got to let us know. Thanks.